Hello everyone, welcome to Vriddhi Legal. Today we have a very intellect person in our session, and I would like to invite Shaisha ma'am, who has completed her law from DAV College, Lucknow, and who has completed her LM from Baba Sahab Bhimrao Ambedkar University. Currently, Shaisha ma'am is pursuing PhD in cybercrimes. Over dozens of publications in national and international journals. Presently, Shaisha ma'am is teaching in MIT University. Hello ma'am, thank you for giving your precious time to us.
Thank you so much, Nishant. And it's really wonderful for me to connect with you people of Vriddhi Legal. And I'm thankful to Vriddhi Legal for giving me an opportunity for dealing with such a recent topic and the sector where I am existing. So I just want the part of education which we are seeing right now, that at the time of COVID-19, this is one of the major sector which has been affected. And in this session, I just want to put out that what are the consequences which the society is basically noticing at the time of COVID-19, and how the education sector, which is like known as the backbone of any country, has been affected. So with this, I just want to share my content, or going to deliver my thoughts on this topic of impact on education sector. So with this, I'm going to start with the topic of today's discussion, that is, what is the impact on education due to this COVID-19? And here I will analyze that how education sector, which is, again, I'm going to just mention this fact, which is known as the backbone of any country, has been immensely affected by this COVID-19. And then we analyze that how this COVID-19 blended our teaching. It's now not just limited to the boards, it's not just limited to duster, it's not just limited to markers, but now we are living in a world of technology, where the entire delivery system of any of the subject, any of the education system has been totally changed. And with this COVID-19, how the government and how the schools are combating, or how they are treating this as, or how they are analyzing this problem of COVID-19. At some time, I can say that sometime it is a boon, but on the later stages, or when we will find out the society, Indian society, when we talk about Indian society, where the people are not having the basic amenity somewhere, how they are lacking with this part of education in their life. So talking about the importance, so this education is one of the right which is considered important for two generations. Like, it is the part of two generations of human right. Firstly, the right where we'll get the social equality, and at the same time, this right is one of the right which is related to economic independence of the person. So we can say that this right is something which is not individual right, but it has its nexus. And this right of education is something which is related to the entire development of the personality of the individual. We can say that if a person is educated, he can achieve anything in life, or you can say if a person is educated, he can change the life of the people. And we termed education as one of the major factor for social transformation. So this is, we can say, the importance of education. And time to time we have seen by the role of judiciary also, that the judiciary tried to connect this part of education with the dignity of individual. Now, talking about that how the system of education evolved in our country. So for that, earlier we all know that there is a Gurukul system, where there is a Guru Shishya Parampara, and from there onwards, we have evolved this education system from the time of Britishers, when the Britishers came in our country, and they tried to make certain regulations related to expansion of education, and how this reforms basically transform the education system in our country. earlier, whatever regulations have been made by the Britishers, I want to just add something more related to this part, that earlier whatever regulations have been made by the Britishers, they are basically connected to the Western education. It was not something like today, like it was not in the close context with the Indian education, but they are basically applying the Western concept, and they are just providing, or they are just involving those curriculum which will enhance the knowledge and at the same time imposing the Western curriculum also. So in 1835, Lord Macaulay basically introduced the modern education system in India, and this regulation is something which is known as the Magna Carta of education system. And from there onwards, major transformation has been seen in the importance of education, role of education, and whether the people of India are ready to just went to schools, went to gain knowledge, or they are something, they were not in the form. So what basically Britishers did at that time, they have opened schools, but that schools were not open for masses, for the general public. So again, they segregated the society, and they segregated the society on the basis that those who are willing to opt for this Western education, and from opting these Western education, what they basically did, that they, from that cluster of people, they used to uh, create civil servants. So when we talk about the education system of India, so there are so many hurdles which actually India faced talking about the education sector, because earlier we are under the rule of Britishers, where Britishers segregated the society on the basis of Western education and then Indian education. But with the passage of time, they also realized this fact that doing this way, they are not going to get any kind of benefit. So somehow the other, they try to change the curriculum, or they have opened the school for the masses. But I think at that time our country was not ready to accept this part of their lifestyle. Either it is because of the deficiency of resources, or we can say that at that time they do not have enough money so they can send their ward to schools. So later in stages, when we talk about the role of international community also, there also we can see this fact very clearly, that either we talk about Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that was in the year 1948, then the two convention, that was in the year 1966, then the Convention on Rights of Child in 1990. So all these convention basically mentioned the part of education as one of the basic human rights. And the part on this Article 28 of Convention of Rights of Child, this convention basically mentioned for the first time that there should be a legal right related to right to education to every children of this country, of any of the member states. So after that, we have Millennium Development Goals. In these goals, actually everything was like, every major human right was connected to education. Either we talk about social equality, either we talk about economic equality, either we talk about development of the country, all these major aspects were connected with education. Then we come to Indian Constitution. Now, Indian Constitution is one of the constitution which is the lengthiest constitution we all know, and this is the constitution which tries to summarize all the essential human rights. And Human Rights Convention, when we talk about Human Rights Convention, like in the previous slide which I have shown, where I have mentioned about UDHR. Now this UDHR has very much influenced, or we can say the Indian Constitution is very much influenced by the provisions of UDHR, and some way or the other they try to incorporate those articles, those principles in the Indian Constitution. But what happened at the time of the making of Indian Constitution, that initially the Constituent Assembly did not make education as a fundamental right, we all know, and it was basically in the directive principles. And it has been mentioned under under Article 41, and that state shall within the limits of its economic capacity and development make provisions for right to work, right to education. And in the Constituent Assembly debate also, Mr. Iyengar was that he was in the favor that this education must be made as a non-justiciable right. Now, why the Constituent Assembly was very much keen to make this right as a non-justiciable right? Because at that time, as I have mentioned earlier also, we do not have adequate resources. Neither we have much monetary funds so that we can provide education to each and every children free of cost. Or we do not have infrastructure, we do not have schools, we do not have colleges where the student can go and avail education. So at that time, it has been realized, the constituent makers were very much, you can say they are visionary, and they analyzed this fact that if we make this as a fundamental right, we have to face certain problems. So they have given right to education under the constitution, but in the form of directions, in the form of directive principles. And then in the same, in the earlier constitution, that is before the amendment of Article 45, it has been mentioned that in the period of 10 years, the period of 10 years has been mentioned, and it has been said that in these 10 years, within this time frame of 10 years, it is the duty of the state to provide education to each and every children, that is free and compulsory. And this is the only article under the constitution which basically deals with the aspect of free time limit also. And here they have mentioned about the free and compulsory education. So in the Constituent Assembly debate only, this fact has been realized that education is one of the essential facets of any of the individual, and we have to give this right, so that the person must, there must be certain kind of awareness among the people that they must get knowledge, and this knowledge can work for the development of the country. So at that time also, there was few members of that Constituent Assembly, they were said that pre-compulsory education was essential, and it is something which is the foundation of the school nation. Then again, Dr. Ambedkar said that and when this constitution was in the making, this article was numbered as Article 36. That is, Article 45 was named as Article 36, where Dr. Ambedkar said that the child must be kept occupied with his educational, with some of the education. Otherwise, what will happen, that he will get involved in other activities like child labor, and he will not attain this knowledge part, and his life is not worthy for the nation. So what was the vision of the Constituent Assembly debate at that time only, that education must be provided, but at that time they were not willing to give this right as a fundamental right. They have examined the importance of education, but they have mentioned it as one of the directives. But when we read the directive principles also, there also it has been, when you read, start from Article 35 or 36 onwards, you will see that it has been said that these directive principles are fundamental in governance. So whenever any of the rule, any of the law has to be made, the government has to give importance to directive principles also. So later, in the later stages, what happened, that after the making of the constitution, so many committees have been established. Now this is the commission which has been established after the making of the constitution, where although the emphasis was given to higher education, but at the same time it has been said that expansion of school education is required. It means establishment of schools is required. And whatever curricula has to be opted, that must be student oriented, that must be in accordance with the learning capabilities of the student, and that must be in the favor of the student. Then there are different policies and different commissions have been constituted, like the Kothari Commission in the year 1964 to 66. Then we have the National Policy of Education, then again the National Policy of Education in 1986. And then in the meantime, after these commissions and policy, we have the 42nd Amendment also, that was in the year 1972, where the education was made as a part of concurrent list. So this was just due to the impact of these policies or these commissions that had been constituted. And the recommendations of these committees or these commissions basically changed the fate of education under the constitution, and they have now mentioned, they have just included this right to education as a part of concurrent list, which was earlier the part of only central. Then we can see that in this slide only that there were basic national policies, and what were the aim of these national policies? Basically to realize the aim of Article 45. It means to make the goal that is mentioned under Article 45 a reality. What is at that time, that was in the year 1968, what was the language of Article 45? That it is the duty of the state that within 10 years they have to provide free and compulsory education. And then furthermore, in the year 1986, another national policy basically examined, and they have recognized the importance of education in the 21st century. And then again, they have mentioned about this thing that education must be accessible, education must be available, and education and the country must strive so that in such a manner that every person can afford education also. So the 3 A's of the education was the prime concern at the time of the making, or the time when these policies were in the making. Then we can say that these policies and commission basically tried to cover the importance, or they tried to work very hard to tackle the importance of education in our country, and this we can see through various national policies on education. And then in the year 1986, they have been just mentioned that there should be maximum enrollment, student must be retained in the schools, and then the quality improvement. Now, this quality improvement is one of the major aspects of this national policy on education, where it has been said that the teachers must teach students not only with the primitive format or the old format, but they have to change themselves according to the needs of the society. So this was the aim of the national policy. It was not just limited to the point of textbooks. It was not limited, like they do not want to make education stagnant. They wanted to make education as more dynamic in nature, and that is why they have mentioned that the quality of the education must be assured at any cost. Then we have a national curriculum of framework that was in the year 2005, where they have mentioned that again the quality education is again one of the important feature of this national curriculum framework also. And then they have mentioned about that whatever content a teacher is delivering, that must be student oriented, or they must be student centric. The student is able to connect whatever the teacher is telling, and then they have basically said that the mode of language, they have emphasized on the modes of language, that what language can be opted. So these are the area of concern in this national curriculum of framework. And what they have mentioned specifically, and what we are noticing in this time of COVID-19 also, that is the engagement of a student and enhancing their creativity, which is a major task till now at the time of COVID-19. So somewhere they tried to include technology in the curriculum. They do not want to just get stuck to the old platform, old system of blackboard and chalks and duster. They want to change the curriculum. They want to change the teaching pattern according to the needs of the society. Then National Knowledge Commission again in the year 2009, which the purpose of this commission also is to make a law related to right to education. And then at the same time to improve the infrastructure. Now here infrastructure is not just limited to desk, bench, or basic other things, but it is somewhere related to use of technology. If the school has been made, if the permission has been granted to the school, then it is somewhere the duty of that school to include technology as a part of their curriculum. The education to our children should not be limited to the textbook reading, writing, but it must be limited to something more. The student must know the use of technology at the time when they are studying. But what we see that apart from few schools or few colleges, none of the school has opted for these things. And what we see that in the name of technology, they have just incorporated one of the subject known as computers, and the student just go to the class and just use for a half an hour, for 20 minutes or 25 minutes, a computer class is there, that's it. But they do not know that where the society is rolling around, where the society is moving around. And this benefit is just majorly given to elite group of schools. And from here onwards, the discrimination actually starts, which we are noticing at this time of COVID-19. So this we can say that this is something which is there is a lack of willpower from the part of the school authorities also, because when you are getting certain kind of grants, if you are getting grants, if you are getting certain kind of benefits from the government, so at the same time you should improve your infrastructure. So after this we have I have just mentioned about one of the important aspect of this right to education, that is Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. So how this Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan is connected to this right to education? Because through the international treaties, India is a signatory or the part of various international treaties. One term which was continuously being used, that is universal education, means education for all. And Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan is one of the flagship program of Indian government, where they have mentioned about this part that through this program only we can get retention in the schools. There should be equality among the boys and the girls. Means the ratio must be maintained, and the education must be accessible. And for that the government has constituted a committee also to revamping, to reshaping the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, and the committee has given his report in the year 2010, where they have emphasized on three aspects majorly, that is equity, access, and gender equality. Okay, so this is an old program that has been run by the government, but to review its working, to make this program more effective, what the government did, that they established a committee, and that committee submitted its report in somewhere in April 2010, and where they have mentioned about these three aspects. It means that the education must be provided to all without any kind of discrimination. Then how judiciary affected, or what is the role of judiciary in realizing that this right to education is one of the fundamental right. So for this, there is one of the leading case of Mohini Jain, from where the entire debate has started, and it has been said that Supreme Court of India said that right to education could be a fundamental right, that, and at the same time that after this there were plethora of cases. There are so many cases. Now the case of Mohini Jain was somewhere related to higher education also, that there should be a free and compulsory education in higher education sector also. So from that part, the court was not very much in favor of this aspect, but what the court said that yes, at the school level, that is that it is mandatory to get education. It is the duty of the state to provide education. Then we have the next important case of Unni Krishnan, where the court said specifically that right to education flows from Article 21 of the Constitution. And from there, onwards, the judiciary has played a pivotal role in realizing the importance of right to education. Then we have this 86th amendment in our constitution that was in the way back in 2002, after the interference or the intervention of the judiciary, that what the states are doing till now. Why they have been noticing this fact that education is a basic human right and it is related to dignity of the individual under Article 21, and it is now a high time that a law related to right to education must be made. So realizing this aspect, what happened that again certain committees have been formed. That is one of the major committee was a Tapas Majumdar committee, and they have just emphasized on the aspect that this right to education must be a part of fundamental right, that too under Article 21A of the Constitution. And this 86th Amendment changed the entire history of right to education from directive principle to fundamental right. Through this 86th Amendment, not only part changes are being made in part 3rd of the Constitution, but the changes are being made in the part 4th of the Constitution also, where as a part of fundamental duty, this right to education was added as 51A, and it has been mentioned that it is the duty of the guardian to provide opportunities for the child to go to school or to get education. And then finally, in the year 2009, we have an act related to Right to Education Act. And this act basically says that elementary education must be provided free of cost. And the act, which came into effect from 1st of April 2010, emphasized on the universal access of the education. And the financial responsibilities must be shared. And it is the duty of the central and the state government to improve the infrastructure, to make certain regulation through which the education is easily available. The schools must be created in the area of 1 kilometer. It should not be very much far, so that the retention rate must be maintained, particularly in case of girls. Basic infrastructure must be maintained, that is in the form of classroom or in the form of toilets, drinking water. Basic amenities must be there, basic needs must be there, because it was realized by the government that most of the female or most of the girl child used to leave school. If we look at the rural area, you will find out they used to leave school just because the reason, because they do not getting even the washrooms, even they are not getting the toilets. So they do not they just leave the school just because of these reasons. So this Right to Education Act that came in the year 2010, finally, that act basically emphasized on these key aspects, that education is not only limited to getting knowledge from the books, but it is the duty of the school to maintain its infrastructure at the same time. Now, one of the important area of this Right to Education Act, that is Section 12 of RTE Act, where it has been mentioned that 25% reservation must be given to disadvantaged group, or the vulnerable section, or the weaker section, or the class of students who are not represented properly. And this is one of the section which was challenged time to time. And this is one of the section which the private schools mostly don't abide with, because education sector is not something which is related to a business. This is something also been mentioned. So this part of RTE, that is Section 12 of the this RTE Act, has been challenged in various cases, where sometimes even the schools have said that they do not know what is RTE. Do not know that, whether they have said for saving themselves, but it is in the year 2016, which I will show you later, where the school has said that we are not aware about this RTE Act. So here again, Section 19 says that certain norms and standards must be settled down for the school. Now, the area of concern here also under Section 19, that norms and standards. Norms and standards must be in accordance to the changing needs of the society. But whether the schools are working towards it, this is again a big question. Every year they are getting hundreds or thousands of students, but at the same time, whether they are improving their infrastructure, this is again a big question. Then we see in the case of unaided private schools of Rajasthan versus Union of India, where this act and the Section 12 was particularly being challenged, and it has been said this part of RTE is something which is against the working of the institute, working of the schools. And then in the year 2016, there is one of the school, and where again the controversy has been arise related to this 25% reservation. And what the school authority said basically, that they are not aware about this right to education. So when we are not aware, how we are going to implement? So these are the cases. There are so many cases. These are few cases which I have mentioned where the schools were they are completely neglecting the aspects of right to education. And this part of, and the motive, and here onwards the motive of right to education failed. The object or the reason for due to which the act has been made, it eventually gets failed. And then from further we will see that how this COVID-19 affected the education. Now we all know that presently we are facing this pandemic, that is COVID-19, which has been emerged from China, and from there onwards every country, like so many countries, every country almost have been facing this problem. Few of the countries have recovered also from this COVID-19, but we as in India are still facing the issues, or is still facing the so many patients coming from different regions, like particularly the major region that are affected by this COVID-19, that is Maharashtra and Delhi. So this COVID-19 is basically pandemic which has affected every sector of the society, and majorly the education sector. So this is something which is still affecting, and due to which the situation of complete lockdown has been made by the government according to the rules of National Disaster Act of 2005. And this is something which is again based on in the entry 23 of the concurrent list of the constitution, that was related to social security and social insurance, and more particularly social security. So under the constitution, none of the provision has been mentioned, but in the concurrent list under this entry 23, it has been mentioned. Then again, there are a few other acts also, and every state has been now reviewing their epidemic acts, and they are making new rules for combating this problem of COVID-19. Now coming to that, what is the impact on the education sector? So according to a Human Rights Watch, more than 1.5 billion students are out of school already because of this COVID-19, and from March onwards we see that there was no proper education. A student is not, they are not able to go to schools. So worldwide they have just noticed about this, that 1.5 billion students are out of school already. And what is the consequence of this? That they are employed in other activities, and particularly and majorly that is child labor. So this is one of the report that was given by the Human Rights Watch. Then there are various international agencies which used to give guidelines related to COVID-19, and how what are the safety measures that are to be taken by the schools also, or by the governments also. So in that scenario, I have mentioned about few of the agencies like UNESCO, WHO, UNICEF, and these are the facts which are being basically given by UNESCO and UNICEF, that 32 crore students are affected in India, and students, like I've said that as far as I can see that due to the advent of this technology, and at the time of COVID-19, that education sector in India has been majorly affected. And firstly we'll notice the negative impact, and then later on we'll move to the what are the positive impact on the education sector in India. So firstly we can see this thing very clearly, that this online mode of education makes a person passive learner. And there is a major difference with that face-to-face interaction, and when we deal with the students in this virtual platform. Okay, and then what are the areas that have been affected due to this? It basically more affects the mental health of the student. and they have to sit continuously, they have to visualize the videos, or they have to listen to the audios, and they are so much included in this technology that somewhere they have just affecting their health also. And in this mode of passive learning, we can't expect that every student, we are not able to see that what the other student is actually doing every time. And when we talk about this teaching profession, or when we talk about this classroom teaching, the face-to-face interaction and this virtual world interaction is completely different. And somewhere which I realized that in face-to-face interaction, the students are more open to the teacher, and they are more open to discuss their problem, they are more open to think, and they are open to visualize the things what they have read. Then there is a huge digital discrimination. Now, this is again one of the major drawback of this digital education at the time of COVID-19, that the students who are not having any kind of gadgets, they are devoid of any kind of internet connectivity, they are devoid of any kind of mobiles or laptops, they are not getting the education, even if their schools are providing the platforms related to virtual classes. Then we can see this thing very clearly, that in the mid of March somewhere this lockdown has been called, and after the 1 week or 2 week, it has been said that now online mode of teaching must be started. And for that, the teachers are not entirely prepared, and the teachers have to change themselves from that face-to-face interaction to virtual world, where they usually take the help of chalk duster to write something and then to discuss with the student. Now they are devoid from all these things. So it was very hard for the teachers also to tackle this problem of this digital education at the time of COVID-19. Because just suppose that if a teacher is teaching to going to a class and is teaching since 30 years or 35 years, and suddenly one day it has been said, now you are not going to take class face to face, you have to sit at your home, you have to open your laptops, and then you have to take class, and it is mandatory to take class at the same time, because this will just hamper their right to education also. So this is something, this was a problem which was faced by the teachers at that time of COVID-19, because they have to transform themselves overnight. And then they realized also that the content which they are delivering, how they are going to deliver that content. Earlier they have all the other support system, that how they are going to deliver that content. So we can see this fact very clearly, that only a small portion of private schools could only opt for online teaching. The schools which have resources, adequate resources, the schools which are taking hefty amount of fee from the students. And then from here, a discrimination actually starts between the private institute and the government institutes. Because some of the private schools can provide education, they are just making their student ready for the industry also. But at the same time, the students who are studying in government schools, they are not getting the basic right of their, that is right to education. Then we can see that this COVID-19 basically increased the dropout rates also. And this scenario is not something which is common only in I can say that this is common only in government school, but also in private school, where there is a huge amount of fee and the parents are not able to provide that fee. So in that situation also, they have the last option, that is to not to provide education to their children. Secondly, the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. Now, one of the motive of this Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, or at the time when this part of universalization of education started, was basically connected to the part that it is connected to midday meal scheme also. So it is the duty of the schools that they have to provide midday meal. And it might be possible that in the rural area where there are not basic amenities of life, this midday meal is one of the aim due to which a student goes to school. And actually this midday meal was initiated in this education system just because to retain the number of students. So at this time we can see this thing that access to food, which is one of the essential component of right to education also, where they have mentioned about Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan and midday meals. Now the children are now devoid of these basic rights of them, that is right to food also, because they can't access to school. And this is ultimately hampering their health also. Then we come to the part that even though the private schools or some of the schools are providing education, but the children below the age of 8 years who are not able to understand that what actually the technology is, how they are going to enter into the class, they need the support of their parents more. And ultimately it becomes more a learning process for parent rather than a student. Then there is a fear of increase in cybercrime also, because as I have mentioned earlier that children below the age of 8 years, they need the support of their parents. And if somehow the parents is not vigilant enough, they can click at any of the button. And at the same time even the student who are above the age of 8 years also, there is a constant fear that they might not click any of the wrong button, they might not leave any of the part of the like any of the, like mostly we used to say that just mute your audio if the class is going on. So these are the aspects of what is basically required, that if the child is below the age of 8 years or something, or if they are not mature enough, then in that situation parents must have, it is mandatory that the whatever the communication has to be done, it must be with the IDs of the email IDs of the parents only. Okay, so this will just somewhere control this cybercrime. Then the last and the most important effect, that is the part of infrastructure, which I have mentioned earlier also, that the infrastructure of maximum schools is not suitable, is not created in such a manner that they can provide online education, because they were just stick to the age old system of education, that is through whiteboards, through chalks, through markers. They are not aware that they need to change according to the change made in the society. And this COVID-19 actually showed them a mirror, that why there is a constant requirement from the side of government according to the rules of RTE, according to the various provisions of RTE, that they have to improve their infrastructure. Then coming to this part of infrastructure also, recently in the month of June, the High Court of Kerala said that every kind of online mode of broadcasting of classes must be stayed, because large number of students are devoid of any kind of gadget. They are not having TVs, they are not having smartphones, they are not having laptops, they are not having computers. So the court said that these broadcasting must be stayed. But at the same time, the question arises then whether the right to get free and compulsory education, or whether the right to get education under Article 21A has been realized in its full with the full zeal or not. So what happened that when the court just given this decision, it has been asked by various NGOs and passed by the parents also, that whether this right to education or this Article 21A has not been violated, because still now somewhere the parents are giving fees. Okay, because few of the government from time to time they have said that the school should not take any kind of fees, but more or less the schools are taking the fees. And in the meantime, if the court just gives such kind of decisions where it has been said that online mode of classes or online broadcasting must be stayed, it will directly affect their right to education. Then 3 A's of universal education are being most affected majorly, where the 3A says that education must be accessible, it must be affordable, that the parents can afford or they can provide access to the student, and at the same time adaptability. Now from this online mode, the major issue arises through the adaptability issues, that whether the student is ready to adapt this new change or not, because mostly it has been seen that online classes are going, student is there, they are sitting idly, we do not know that whether they are listening or not, but at the same time it is mandatory that we have to provide education, but the student is not ready to adapt this mode of education. And another issue which is seen that in few, like in some of the newspapers, so some days back it has been, I've read about this part, that in the online classes also unknown students enters, and they used to create nuisance in that online mode of teaching. So this is again one of the aspect of this cyber crime, and they used to say some bad words to the teachers also. So these all things basically shows that we are not entirely ready for this online mode of education, or the people are lacking certain kind of civic sense, or they're not aware that what they are doing. Then coming to the positive impact on right to education in India. So talking about the positive impact, there are so many open platforms are being created. The classes are being conducted through new portals like Zoom, like Microsoft Teams, like Google Teams, so Google Classroom. So there are so many ports through which now the education is available to students. They do not have to go anywhere, and they get that education at their doorstep. And we can say that this is a phase of transformation. We are transforming from an age-old classroom pattern to now online mode of learning. Physical barriers or physical constraint are completely removed. Now the child can't say that I am ill, so I can't attend. I have certain issues, so I can't come to school. So they have to attend classes through that online modes. Then we can see is this in this slide very clearly that India is one of the largest country related to online courses, that is MOOCs, and after USA. So as I've told that there are so many open platforms available, like one of them is Diksha platform, where the school books related to school education are available. The child has just to enter its details, and then he will get access to those books or content. Then in the meantime, through various surveys, it has been realized that still 2024, in India, there is a huge transformation related to use of mobiles, and the education will be available to the remote areas of the country. And this will make education as a more personal affair for the student. And this can change in the entire schooling system. And this we are realizing that this time of COVID-19 also. So ultimately, we can say that school education, which is the foundation of any of the student, is basically being neglected by the government. And this COVID-19 basically showed that how this education system has been basically neglected by the government so far, and how this COVID-19 created a certain kind of disparity among the private schools and the public schools. So what is important that there must be a complete blend of technology with education, and this aspect is lacking at this time of COVID-19. Now the sixth commission that was made related to the education, which is made for the betterment of the education in our country, basically said this line at that time only, that the destiny of India is now being shaped in her classrooms. So we have to see, in this situation, we have to see that whether we are really shaping the future, because we are devoid of the basic amenities. Schools are not having infrastructure. They are not able to implement the rules that are being made under Right to Education Act. They are not able to provide education to the students. And at the same time, when they are not able to provide education through the online modes, they are charging fees also. So these all factors are collectively, when we think about all these factors collectively, we can see that the goals of Right to Education Act or the Right to Education legislation are not completely achieved. And earlier also, and at this time of COVID-19, it has been clearly shown by the working of the educational institutes, primarily at the school level, that they are completely neglecting this part of education. Although sometimes even I feel that they have infrastructure also, like they have good amount of money also, but they do not want to implement, they do not want to use them for the betterment of the student. So these are all the issues, or we can say the positive and negative impact of COVID-19 on right to education. And with this, it's over to you, Nishant.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving your precious time to us and to telling our viewers about the present scenario of education in the fields which we are lacking right now. Because even in the advertisements which are being portrayed by the government of India or by the state governments, we can see that the students who are running towards the public schools, they are not well off and they cannot afford books and copies. And you have very rightly included the points that around 2.6 lakh students are lacking behind with an internet access to on their television or on their devices. So thank you so much, ma'am, for giving your time. And I hope the viewers have really understood each and every point of right to education with respect to COVID-19, pros and cons. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Nishant.